Not my story, but my dad's. He and a mate were out bush spotlighting one night and had decided to call it a night and head home. They'd packed up the guns and were driving out. Upon rounding a bend, they heard what both Dad and his friend describe as the most terrifying, blood-curdling scream they'd ever heard, coming from where they had just been. They reloaded their guns and decided to go back and investigate F***CK that, and discovered the body of a kangaroo, freshly decapitated kangaroo, with the head nowhere to be found. They got out of there real quick after that. Skinwalker sighting. Pretty sure I encountered a skinwalker, even though that wouldn't make sense since I was in Oregon. But while my dad was taking a piss in the bushes, I was in the truck and saw a coyote step out of some trees on my side of the truck. Its eyes were human, and its face was strangely human. I locked eyes with it and instantly started panicking, but couldn't look away. When my dad got in the truck, it stood up on its hind legs and walked back into the trees. I started hitting my dad saying, "Go, go, go, just F***Kingo." And he sped off. Something left an animal carcass at this hunter stand. I was walking to my stand early one morning, like an hour before sunup early, and I started hearing footsteps behind me. I thought I was just tripping because honestly, who hasn't thought? They heard scary noises in the dark, but it very quickly became apparent that they weren't just echoes or anything like that. I spun around and brought my gun up, but my headlight reflected off my scope and I got blinded. I heard the footsteps move off the trail, but I couldn't see anything. As I started moving again, a light appeared to the woods to my right, paralleling me about 75 yards away. It continued alongside me for about 50 to 100 yards before I cut my headlight off, at which point it swept back and forth, then clicked off. At this point I was crouched down with my gun up, and I could hear two male voices whispering to each other, then nothing. I crept to my stand and felt safer with my back to a tree and looking out over the trail I came in on, but I never saw any deer. When it was time for lunch, I climbed down the deer stand and checked a rub line maybe 100 yards to my left for activity. When I got back, there was a rabbit at the base of my stand. Its head had been neatly cut off and the wound was still steaming. The rabbit was limp, but there was no blood or footprints anywhere near. Man stalks campsite all night. About 20 years ago, a girlfriend and I went on our first backpacking overnight. We hiked into the mountain next to Tucson, Arizona, to a popular spot miles from any roads with a pool of water, not that common in the desert. Late at night, as we were sleeping, we heard walking around our tent, circling it and making a grunting sound. It was clearly a man, and I had to assume he was not sane. He did this on and off all night, and was still around at dawn, when he began leaping into the watering hole and screaming like the madman he was, followed by more tent circling and grunting. I told my girlfriend to keep quiet as to not let the man know who was inside the tent, which is what he wanted, I think. We slept late and never saw this guy. We left that afternoon, being my first camping trip. This spooked me for years and had me believing that this was fairly common. Trippy photography reveals ghost man. Creepiest, we hunt in the middle of nowhere. Absolutely nobody lives anywhere within miles of us. I had my camera set up in the middle of a field with a 3-shot burst. Each picture is taken about half a second apart. In one sequence of 3 shots, there's a picture with nothing in it. Then a picture of a man standing across the field on the tree line. Then nothing again in the third. Cougars move in silence. When I was pretty new to hunting, my brother and I were up in this sort of open-ended, horseshoe-shaped canyon up in the mountains, hunting elk with bows. We both had radios, so we could talk to each other, right around the bottom of the horseshoe. The foliage opened up, and I could see my brother right down below me. About 100 yards down the canyon, I kept an eye on him, so I could match his pace. Kept walking forward, when I saw something exiting the foliage that he just exited. I didn't have binoculars, but I did have my rangefinder, which has a small zoomed in ability. I take it out. Look at the thing. It's a cougar. Down in a stalking stance. Following my brother. I get on the radio and tell him not to move. There's a cougar behind him, and it knows he's there, so he just stops in his tracks. Didn't even use the radio. It felt like I was watching that thing for forever before it turned around and left. It's F***ing terrifying that those things are so silent, like, it was so quiet on that mountain. All you hear is your footsteps in the snow and maybe a little wind. My brother had no idea he was right behind him. Camping on private property can yield occult treasures. My dad's friend owns some land that we hunt on. We decided we'd camp on the land and hunt in the morning. I wouldn't say there are any deer nearby. We mostly shoot at the dove and pheasant that reside in the area. After the combines pick all the corn, so I have trouble sleeping. And I hear plenty of rustling at night. Figure it's coyotes. After we get up and finish hunting, we pack up and I walk around. Take in the nice day and the nice sounds of being away from the suburbs. There on a tree was a game camera, crudely duct taped, pointed right where the tent was. Wasn't my dad's or his friend's. We all were a little creeped out and slightly on edge when we found the film missing. We noped the hell out of there. Don't set up camp outside a bear den. A few years ago, I was hunting in northern Alberta for elk in an area I wasn't familiar with. My hunting buddy dropped me off in what looked like a good spot in the early morning dark, and then he drove off. I trudged through some really dense bush before finding what looked like a nice little clearing in the middle of the brush. I backed up into the woods and watched the clearing from cover. Now, there were some swamps around, and it smelled a bit funky. But I just chopped it up to some swamp gas or something. As the light started to come up, I gave a few calls and didn't hear much for returns. I did hear some sticks crack behind me, but that could be anything, so I didn't move much. With more light, I could see more around me, and the nice meadow I saw in the dark was swamp. And there must have been a bear den nearby, because there were moose skulls and bones all over the place, and one fresh kill about 20 yards behind me. I had been so intent on watching for movement and staying still that I hadn't seen the skulls until I actually looked. The hair on the back of my neck was instantly chock full of adrenaline. I went back and sat next to the road for 2 hours, as I didn't want to be bear food. I didn't bother checking for tracks where I heard the stick break, because again, I didn't want to be bear food. If you like this video, hit the like button, share this video, and subscribe now.